Hello there and welcome to the Cargo Bay Presents American Talkers Lord of the Rings edition. I'm Brady C here with my host as always.
Adam B. We're back, BC.
Well, were we ever really away? You know, we're always in the.
What you just said. We're experiencing some internet difficulties. There's been the life difficulties that led up to this recording. We're a little late.
I think we're setting the appropriate tone for what this is going to be. So I think we're good.
I think so too. We're going to talk about Lord of the Rings. We were trying to do this before Christmas. This is kind of a Christmas tradition. But as we discussed in an earlier attempt at recording this, it's still Christmas until New Year's Eve, right?
Yeah, Christmas. You got the additional 12 days of Christmas. You're not hearing anything, are you?
No, I can hear you.
I'm just a robot, man.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Whew. Well, just start flailing if you lose me and I have to repeat myself.
Can you not tell I'm already flailing? I'm really... I'm gonna bring us over to this fantastic document that you created, BC, because then at least if we sound like robots, there will be things to look at.
That's right. Fancy, beautiful pictures.
We've talked about the Fellowship of the Ring last year. Check that video out. It must exist somewhere. And now we get to talk about the Two Towers, BC. I'm gonna advance this slide. I don't know what you've got in store for us.
I love it. Oh, what I've got in store is a wonderful walk through history of what you could expect.
Wow.
In December of 2002, and I just want to point out we're a mere 3 months away from the premiere of American Chopper.
Wow.
So we're in a great time historically. On the precipice of being introduced to the spider bike. It's a very exciting time. We've got, of course, famous and beloved Lance Armstrong, Sportsman of the Year from Sports Illustrated.
Sportsman of the Year. Love it.
Sportsman of the Year. Yep, a wonderful bicyclist, and I believe there is nothing else to say about his career other than he was just really good at riding a bicycle.
Man, it is wild how long ago this movie came out. Lose Yourself by Eminem, topping the Billboard Hot 100. That's the one where he has like the Pee Wee Herman video, right?
It's it's from the 8 Mile soundtrack. It's Mom's Spaghetti.
Oh, okay. I am not the biggest Eminem expert, I'm afraid. I understand. That's that makes more sense.
I'm just here to present the historical facts that this was the top of the charts when Lord of the Rings came out in the middle of December 2002. And we were marching our way towards invading the Middle East, which is all very exciting stuff for high school me at this point in time.
I just turned 12 years old, so luckily, I had zero interest in what was happening anywhere outside of my, my tiny little experience. Which it was probably for the best. The Two Towers opening weekend, $62 million. How it beat Made in Manhattan, I'll never know.
It's a surprise. It's a shock. It's funny to look at the box office because this period of time is when I particularly started looking at box office results. I don't really know why. I think it's because I'm so excited about Lord of the Rings and I wanted it to be like the very best. So when it came out 62 million, that was super exciting. I remember, so I just to paint the scene a little bit from December, I don't know if I've ever been more excited for a movie than The Two Towers at this point.
Yeah.
Like after seeing Fellowship of the Ring, all I could think about was let's get to the next movie and see it on the big screen. So Like I was jacked out of my mind, and so were the people, as evidenced by a crushing 2 weeks notice at the box office.
I was one of those people as well. I read The Hobbit before I saw The Fellowship of the Ring, and then after The Fellowship of the Ring, I had at least read through The Two Towers at this point. I think that's right. I don't think I had quite finished Return of the King by the time this came out, but I did finish The Two Towers. And I was incredibly excited. And I think this did significantly, much better than The Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah,
people had caught that on
the next
DVD.
Slide has the next slide has the Fellowship's opening weekend box office. So it did do significantly better in the opening weekend. I think it Fellowship, I think, just got word of mouth and took hold over time. But by the time Two Towers was out, it was like, game on. Fellowship rocked. Let's do the Two Towers,
I also want to point out in 2002 we had a Wild Thornberrys movie, which I did not remember existing, and in 2001 Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. That's something I forgot about existing. I saw that movie at some point.
A remarkable 13 million on the opening weekend for Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius.
Not bad. Not bad. I think it was an okay movie. I don't remember. All right, I'm clicking the slide, BC, and then we have Two Towers, the movie. Is this where we talk about the opening of this movie?
I think this is where we talk about the opening of the movie. Because I always confuse the editions, because I will watch both the extended and theatrical, but I think I generally watch the extended edition more often. So I'm not sure if that they change the beginnings. So I did go back and watch the theatrical this time. And this does start helicoptering over the mountains as we go back into Gandalf squaring off the Balrog.
Yeah, I am kind of I've seen the extended editions, but I tend to watch the theatrical versions more. And man, I just love how bold and cheesy this intro is, and that they pulled it off. I mean, the fact that we're going into the movie that has won the most Academy Awards of any film, and this starts with an old man on a CG demon stabbing it repeatedly as they fall into hell. It's incredible stuff.
This movie rules. It's amazing. Truly fantastic stuff. And I don't like. I think I really enjoyed watching it this time. I may have taken an edible before indulging in the viewing, which did lead to a much closer watch than I've had in a very long time. Like, I feel like the last 10 years, I have at best passively watched the Lord of the Rings movies. This year, I gave them all a very close watch and was like, these movies are amazing. They're corny. They're blockbustery. Like, they're crazy fantasy. They're CGI and wizards of special effects. Like, they have everything. But I love that we start by going back to Gandalf facing the Balrog. And literally, let's just jump back for anyone who missed Fellowship of the Ring.
Let's just milk the most famous scene, like a meme before there were memes, basically.
Yeah. Let's get another "You Shall Not Pass" in here. Let's go back to it. Let's get into, because it's something that I don't know that I really appreciated, but like Gandalf fighting the Balrog is one of the most epic things that maybe has ever existed in fantasy. He's just he's like, I'm gonna take on this giant fire demon. You guys better get out of here. And I had a totally new appreciation for this moment. The fact that you see him like flying down and catching his sword as he's going
the sword
to the highest
incredible.
It's amazing. It's so good. And then he fells the beast on the side of the mountain. Like, it's just so crazy. Then Frodo wakes up and is like, is it a dream? No, it really happens. Like, this is what occurs. The intro to the movie just slaps. They're like, let's go to the hardest moment from the first movie and just jump people back into this world.
There may have been a point where I wanted to watch, cool looking young to middle-aged men fighting things was like the peak. I have definitely reached the point in my life where getting to see an old man with a long beard fighting a demon is probably the peak. Just the audacity not only to film this and create it, but to open one of the most anticipated movies of all time. And it's just a different, I feel like we'll never be there again. There will never be another.
Our society will never be as cool as it was just prior to the release of American Chopper. Spoiler alert for Return of the King. Watching Gandalf fight in that is amazing too, because you're just like, he is so old and he's just out there leading armies, and you're like, what is happening? And I love it. I love it so much. Watching again, just it brought back a total love for the character Gandalf and Sir Ian McKellen's portrayal as well. So shout out to them for starting the movie this way.
Yeah, it's hard to beat Ian McKellen's performance, but we got more performances to talk about. Of course,
my
BC.
goodness.
Is there another slide? Can you check before I reveal
there is another.
Will you just tell me when to advance? Then I'll be at the ready over here.
Go ahead and hit the advance.
Oh,
so
yes.
I kind of broke it down into the story arc. I think one of the amazing things about these movies is the novels are so dense. They are so packed with like nuance from multiple locations across all of Middle Earth of different things that are happening. The trilogy does, I think, as good of a job as you can do in a movie of like telling cohesive stories on all those fronts. But we do have the Frodo Sam and the Gollum Smeagol as the main thrust at the beginning, as we come into Frodo waking up from what is a fever dream of Gandalf fighting the Balrog, and we get back in with this crew. This is really I think of Two Towers as really like the shining moment for the Gollum and Smeagol animation and Andy Serkis too.
Yeah, watching this, the reverse is true in the book, where this is all at the end. Like Helm's Deep is done, and then we cut to Frodo, Sam, and Gollum.
The timelines are
backward. They're backwards. But watching this, I was like, I felt that this is clearly the weakest stuff in the movie, and it's like people were so captured by like, look at this Gollum thing, oh my gosh, it looks real. I feel like that did a lot of carrying of this stuff in 2002 that maybe doesn't quite hold up.
Definitely doesn't hold up.
It still looks good, but there are a lot of moments where it's like, this is some of the weaker moments of the trilogy.
Like that's the rose tinted glasses have come off for me, like over time, and some of this stuff, like at the time, groundbreaking. Like we'd never seen anything like it before. Now you're like, well, they did have to shoot most of this in low light, so they didn't have as much definition on all of the like heavy amounts of CG that they did, and like it you see the seams a little bit more just because we're more familiar now with those effects.
Yeah,
but it still works as like a period thing for me too, similar to the way that like the 77 Star Wars works as like a period, space fantasy. It was like, it's dated, but the story carries it. It's still good enough for it to move beyond the datedness of some of the effects.
Yeah. I mean, I think Elijah Wood and Sean Astin do a good job, doing what they got to do, but they're working with a man who may not be there sometimes, crawling around on the floor. I don't know how much there was in it. There's not quite the charisma and excitement that carries a lot of the cheesery in other moments.
Well, and I noticed this too, because the way that they shot this is interesting, right? Like where it's like did principal photography for all three movies at the same time over like 13 months, and then they went back and would like do pickups.
Yeah.
So like you can tell there are moments that are this was from principal photography, and then like, yeah, we had to go get an insert of someone sighing heavily for the shot, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's and it's for across all of the movies. Like you're just like, when did they shoot this like, clip insert of someone just going, and that's the thing, you know, like there's just so many like scenes to it, but like that's how they had to make it because they were like releasing it and finishing the effects as they were going through. So by the time they get to Return of the King, has way more like computer effects. There's just a lot of like performance moments where it's like they just had to get in costume that day and were pointed at a camera and told, just go walk for a little while. We'll get a shot of you walking and we'll put everybody in the background. Like there's very little acting. It's like there's a lot of actors being like motion props
Yeah.
in these movies.
And they'll linger on a shot like that for so long. It's just like, which I love, but it's just this would never happen now. And if this came out now, the internet would savage so much about it that like this creative process would not exist anymore, and it certainly wouldn't be critically lauded when you've got two guys in wigs with fake feet just looking really melodramatic for like an hour and a half of a movie. It just wouldn't fly anymore, I feel like. And I'm glad it did.
I don't think so. I'm like it still flies for me because it plays on such a nostalgic thing. Like I think for younger, like, because it's funny because I think I probably showed this to like my niece and nephews were younger. Like I remember like letting them watch the DVD for Fellowship, and immediately they're like, "Do you have the next one?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." I was like, "Let's go, kids." It's like I do think it does hit on that in terms of like the universal appeal. But the older you get or the more removed you are from it, that like leap of faith into the story and the effects is I did find challenging as I was watching it. But like my love of the story like got me through it, and the stuff that was like dated it made me laugh. Like it made me like I had like a genuine joy out of like, oh my god, that's so bad now.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I'm not saying it was bad at the time, like groundbreaking at the time. But you look back on it fondly, and you're just like, it's of a different era. Like I felt my own age watching it this time in a way that I had not because I just passively watched it. Right. This time I was like, I am so much older now.
Yeah.
Than I was when I first watched this, and I just have a different like relationship to it. But I still love it. Like even though it's got warts and whatever. That was probably my thing about the experience was like I feel my age in this, and it's weird and it's funny, and I still just enjoy the hell out of it.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I feel like this time watching this movie, because I normally will just steamroll through the trilogy, I feel like, and I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So watching this one separately, and also like kind of having other stuff going on that I was dealing with, maybe not being quite as in the mood to watch it. I did judge it a little more harshly than I have in the past. But this is the stuff that to me has aged the poorest. Although there's still the highlights. I love the dead marshes. Always gonna crack me up.
That's the initial slide to the black gate before they get pulled back from the black gate. You're like, you're right there.
Mm-hmm. How do they not notice you, dude?
Well, they pull their little capes over themselves, and it's all fine.
Yeah.
All they had to do was look down, and they would have seen them there. But it's fine, whatever.
It's elf magic. It's elf magic and halfling magic.
That's the thing. It's all just high fantasy, and you can just absolve the sins with saying this is just fantasy. If you want to hit the next slide, we can continue on with. I mean, probably the heavy hitters of this movie, which is Man, the Elf, and the Dwarf, as they make their chase for Merry and Pippin, who are taken by the orcs at the end of Fellowship of the Ring. What a blast! I mean, this is really the heart of the movie.
Yeah.
Is this particular story? This is when it's like good and cooking to me. Like it slows down significantly when it's Frodo and Sam and Smeagol and when it's Merry and Pippin and Treebeard. This is the stuff that like as a youngster or as a more youthful person, I was like, this is so cool. Look at the elf and the dwarf and the future king with all their swords and their axes and stuff. This was the business for me.
Yeah, this is growing up. I always said this one was my favorite, which spoiler alert, probably maybe my least favorite of the trilogy now. But this was the reason why. It was like, oh man, we got three awesome characters who are like, there's like a bromance going on, but there's also the separation because they're from different cultures, and so there's like this respect, this kind of like noble, like high fantasy weirdness, you know, like everyone has very clearly defined roles. There's no I guess what I'm saying is beyond Gimli and Legolas kind of being like, oh, you're an elf and I'm a dwarf, there's no interpersonal drama even in the novels. You know, they're never complaining about anything. They're just like being cool and doing cool stuff.
They're being cool and kicking ass. Like, it rocks. You know, they get to run through cool locations. You get to see them like wide angle shots from a helicopter running across mountains and plains and like beautiful New Zealand. You're just like, that seems pretty dope.
I did listen to the entire novel.
Oh, nice.
It feels weird calling Lord of the Rings a novel. It's bigger than that. But I listened to the audiobook again. And I will say that they sell Gimli short. You know, they kind of make Gimli the comic relief, which is fair. I don't really begrudge the films making any decisions that they made. But Gimli is he's given much more nobility in the books, and also he's the one with the endurance. He's a dwarf and all these other little minor things. But the biggest missed opportunity, I feel like, is there's this line in the books where they come upon, you know, the dead orcs everywhere, and they're like, it's Gimli's like, it's the end to our hope and toil, and Aragorn says, the end to hope perhaps, but not to toil. And it was like, man, that's such a badass line. The end to hope, but not to toil. It's fucking sick. We're gonna keep on going after these hobbits, whether they're dead or not.
We ain't stopping.
But yeah,
it's so good. John Rhys Davies is 100% the comic. Like, it is noticeable how much comic relief he has in this movie. Like, it is pronounced how much. And I mean, it's a departure, but you do get the sense like they're like, maybe we need to add a little levity to this.
This 3 hour.
You need to add some
depression.
To just. Well, because like the other story is like Treebeard and the Hobbits, which is the most boring thing in the world to me. Like that is all just like, oh my god, like I get it, but like let's get through this. And then Frodo, Sam, and Gollum is like, I mean, it does need a little like something. So when you have John Rhys Davies, you're like, just let him go in and throw some fastballs. Like let him be the comic relief. And he's great, and it's all very charming, but it is a departure, you know.
Yeah, I mean the books are largely humorless beyond the hobbits being
oh my God,
basically the only sense of humor the books has is the hobbits acting like there's nothing terrible going on when there's terrible stuff going on. So it makes sense. I mean, I think the characterizations of Gimli and Legolas are great. It's such a weird. And again, it's so weird that Orlando Bloom is perfect as this character. Not really, like, I wouldn't want a better actor in the role, if that makes sense. Like the self seriousness and the melodrama works so well.
I mean, I think I mentioned it to you. If you count the number of like lines he actually has in all 3 movies, he maybe has like 3 pages of dialogue
Yeah.
total across all of the scripts of the Lord of the Rings. Like a lot, and it's funny how much like for as dense as the books are, like mundane conversation, how little dialogue actually exists in these movies. Like it is so story driven as a like dialogue driven. So when I watch them, I'm like, there's so little actual dialogue or conversation that happens in these movies. And they're still 3 hours long because they have to get so much plot into them that it's mind-boggling how little some of the actors had to do, like in terms of dialogue in these movies.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, even in the book, there's so little. The book still pulls the trick that the movies pull, which is like, you know, you leave something mysterious and that makes it cool. Like, you know, you don't reveal what everyone's tricks are. You have a line like, "What do your elf eyes see?" versus "Elven eyes are able to see 30 miles," and blah 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 blah.
Like, your vision's so good. What's out there?
But yeah, it's a hoot watching them run across the plains for long periods of time and fight things on top of a wall. And even some of the action stuff,
Wonderful.
like sliding down the stairs on a shield, I thought was very silly even as a child. But it doesn't matter. You know, like it's a fun action movie.
I thought it was cool as hell. It is stupid. It is objectively really,
I really
really
thought
stupid.
it was stupid as a kid, but I also was willing to roll with it. I was like, yeah.
Oh, totally. But it's funny because, you know, for as much of like its inserts and quick cuts, to me, the glue of all of this, similar to Star Wars, is the score. Where when he's sliding down, it's like Howard Shore's like, you want some epic hero music for when he's pulling that move? All right, let's blast the horns. Like, let's bring in the trumpets and the French horns, and let's get the full orchestra tuned up to make sure everyone knows this rules.
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously, a lot of this stuff would fall flat without.
Oh man,
some good
with a lesser
music.
Score. Totally, yeah.
Oh, 1 second. Let me tell my wife that I am recording a podcast.
Copy that, and you can advance to the next slide whenever you're ready.
Here we go. Oh, I didn't knock that title card up until now. And then, of course, yes, Gandalf the White.
Oh my goodness! What a reveal! For those people who didn't read the books and didn't know that this was going to happen. So cool.
It is very funny. This is maybe the biggest departure from the novel and just like the drama cranking up. Where like this scene in the book like is a very slow burn of like, I'm gonna slowly coax this king into being a king again, versus like the robe comes off. It's like, this is the movie. We gotta communicate this stuff quick. We gotta go have a fist fight in the hall.
Yeah. They walk down the hall and get her done. I can't say enough about Sir Ian McKellen. When you talk about dialogue and heavy lifting, when you give him anything to say, I believe it 100% almost every single time words come out of his mouth. Like, shout out to him for being able to play Gandalf as some of the craziest dialogue, but when he says it, somehow you're like, yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, that's when we watched Fellowship last year. I shed a tear on the bridge of Khazad-dûm because I was like, the fact that this man gave this much to this silly thing is like, it's inspirational. I'm like, what?
It's so good, and it again upon a close watch and with a little more age and understanding, like. Because the Fellowship, I rewatched it again this year, and a lot of that running through, you know, like before they cross the bridge, and like, we've got to jump across the stairs that are crumbling, and like,
yeah.
There's just so much like guff to me. There's just a bunch of like action nonsense, which is fine. Like, whatever, I get it, and I still love it, and it's entertaining. But when Gandalf like you just hear the Balrog, and he turns it and looks at us like, this is beyond any of you. I'm like, I believe it. This is bad. And like, we just spent all this time selling how badass all these dudes were. You know, like they just beat a cave troll. They're kicking everyone's ass. And he's like, you need to get out of here right now. You know, when he's like, fly. You know, like when he says that, his commitment in that moment, I'm like, oh man, he's so good at this. He is so good at acting.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just every movie, he has some moment that just reasserts how committed he is to this, and I just love the hell out of it.
I can't bring myself to finish the Hobbit trilogy.
I haven't.
Those movies are not for me.
I've seen the first two. They're
and part
bad,
of it is just I don't want to see the diminishment of this character. Like let's leave Gandalf here. And in the
I don't acknowledge them.
When he reveals himself to them in the woods, in the book, it is terrifying because they first just see, and because I read the book before I knew what was going to happen. They think they're in Fangorn, on the edge of Fangorn, and they think Saruman is just like out there walking at night. Like they see him like before a night or two before they talk to him, and I'm like, that's really creepy. To imagine being stalked by a wizard, it's not fun.
Well, it's funny, and it's funny the way because I mean they do play up the tension and the drama as they can a moment in a major motion picture. And the way that they blend the voices of Christopher Lee and Ian McKellen is a touch like
manipulative a little bit.
Yeah, I'm like, I mean, I get it, but that to me is kind of like we could maybe do without that particular sound effect. But seeing him revealed with the glowing white light behind, drawing Sauron from the mind within, you're just like, I love it. Sick.
Do we have a slide here for the Men of Rohan? Do we? I mean you, because I didn't help with this at all.
I did a location slide that I thought we could kind of cover Rohan under. So I've got Edoras and Helm's Deep and that sort of stuff. So if we want to do that here in a couple slides, we can. I've got the my favorite storyline is Treebeard on the next slide.
This is this is the most interesting thing about the Ents to me. Is please correct me if there's anyone out there still listening who can correct me, but the Ents in the book, they talk about the Entwives. They're missing Entwives, and they talk about the old forest in the Shire as this place where trees maybe sometimes move. And it's always like, well, yeah, clearly the Entwives are in the old forest, and clearly that's where they wound up, or at least has always been something in my head. But I can't find any. There's so many forum posts with Tom Bombadil like theories and whatever, and no one ever talks about. They spend so much time in the book talking about the dang Entwives. It's like they're over there in the Shire, you dummies. Why don't the hobbits
if there's
ever
any experts on the Entwives out there, drop it in the comments. Post a Reddit thread for us. We can check on that. It's got to be out there. I would assume. There's so much crazy like scholarship on all of the like insane. I do truly mean insane lore that Tolkien built around all of this. Where it's just like, I just spent the day writing 37 songs in the language of something else. Like, what did you do with your time? Like, how much free time did you? Yeah.
There's a point in the book, I can't even remember what it is to commemorate. Oh, it's when they're commemorating Boromir's death. So Boromir dies at the beginning of the Two Towers. And so they like put him in a boat and they send him off to the sea, and Aragorn spontaneously sings a song, I guess improvises a song about Boromir, and then Legolas sings for a page. And it cracked me up because I was listening to it so much. It's like Aragorn sings, Legolas sings, and then there was a pause and it says, and then Aragorn sang again. again. It's like, oh, Aragorn's gonna add another verse.
Just saying, there could have been some editing on the songs. Like
No.
I'm listening to the, I'm listening. I get it. No, I get it. I'm listening to the Andy Serkis narrated version of Fellowship right now. Just got to a chapter that is, there's so much Hobbit singing occurring right now that I'm just like, all right, I get it. We're still we've got a lot of songs, but I'm just like, can't help but picture him in the studio recording it, being like, and what tune am I singing for this song? Am I just making one up on the fly? Like, do you want me to just improvise it? Like, is there someone who's coming up with like a melody for him? Because there are so many songs.
There are a lot of songs, and that's one reason I want to hear the Andy Serkis version, but I can't picture it being better than this old dude who recorded it in the 70s or whatever, singing these songs. But I watched an interview of George R.R. Martin talking about how, well, Tolkien, he doesn't really know, like, it's the Lord of the Rings ends and it's just like, oh, they lived happily ever after, and it's like, well, or he, Aragorn rules for many a happy year. It's like, well, what's the tax policy? What's the what? Like, Tolkien doesn't know what this stuff is or whatever. And it was like derogatory towards Tolkien, like outwardly, and it's like, your name is George R.R. Martin for a reason, I'm guessing. Like, I think it's a tribute to J.R.R. Tolkien, but also like, do you not know that it's based on legend? Like, this is written to be a legend, not a a novel. Like, it's very
not
old
the
school,
unfinished
and I find
Game of Thrones tome.
Yeah, I find the Lord of the Rings very comforting. Aside from a few places where it's outdated and questionable ways.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely more comforting than Game of Thrones, which is like, well, here is the tax policy. I'm like, I don't really give a shit about tax policy. Like, I like
about fictional tax policy.
Yeah, about fictional tax policy for a world that, I get that there's like, he draws a lot of like of his drama and story from those like really grainy details about these things. But at a certain point, I'm like, I don't need all of that. Like, I enjoy a legend, large mythology that deals in larger tropes. I mean, I enjoyed some of the Game of Thrones TV show, but I've never even approached reading those books because I'm just like, I don't know. I don't have it in me to do it at this point. I may try to pick up first book at some point just to see, but like, knowing that he's never gonna finish writing them, it's just kind of like, I don't know. And the end of the TV show really sucked, so it is kind of like, I got my Game of Thrones experience. I don't need him trashing on the tax policy, Yeah.
I read
George
most of the first book, but eventually gave up because it does the thing where it's like, here are 9 characters and we're going to get right up to a climax of one character, and then we're going to start back at the beginning of the wheel of characters. So you won't resolve this little chapter climax until you've read about 9 other characters again and forgotten, like, or lost interest in how that was going to. Which was something that was surprising to me rereading this, is like, no, everything is pretty linear. There's not a lot of hopping around between characters in the books. But yeah, the Treebeard stuff is kind of boring. Again, I think the spectacle of it at the time worked well to keep people engaged. And I like the Hobbits. These two are good together. They're nice little comic relief.
They're great together. It is funny having to think about them filming this because, like, they talk about, like, yeah, we were just sitting on bicycle seats in a fake 3 floors, You're like, what a job,
I love
You'll boost me up in my bicycle seat.
Also, the orcs, all the stuff with them being captured by the orcs is some of my favorite. Maybe my favorite moment is in Lord of the Rings is the blue orc who says, "Yeah, we want some meats." And then there's that guy who crawls around after him who says he's gonna cut a maggot hole in their belly.
Sick.
Great stuff. Just heavy makeup.
Amazing.
People having the time of their lives.
Speaking of having the time of your lives, if you want to hit the next slide, oh
Oh,
boy, things
yes.
get interesting here. Woo!
Yeah.
I don't think this works really for me
No.
for me on a second viewing, but I understand why they put it in, but
I mean, it's in the
the
book.
execution is
It's there in
I
the
get it.
novel.
It's just really crammed. I feel
Yeah.
like it just feels heavy handed
The extended
in this.
edition really devotes more to this, right?
It does. It does. Yeah, I think it's better watching it in the extended edition. I don't think bothers. I did watch the theatrical this time, and I was like, boy, they are really jamming this into a short amount of time. They're
Yeah.
like, we got to get this in here. There's a love triangle. Don't forget about Arwen. She's jonesing for Aragorn. Like it's it's just one of those things. Like if you have the time to develop it, it seems like it's a lot more successful, and I think it does work better in the extended edition. In the theatrical, it does just kind of feel like a little rusty. I don't know.
Yeah, if we were getting more Arwen, I wish it was more action stuff. I love that horse chase to Rivendell so much in the first movie. If you're gonna make some stuff
Yeah.
up, why not cram that cool elven sword into the book somewhere?
And a rushing river just taken out.
We are
Some
gonna
Black
cram.
Riders.
We're gonna cram some more elves in here that aren't in the book. Eventually.
Yeah, if you want to hit the next slide, we can get to some Helm's Deep talk, some
Yeah.
Theoden, some Rohan. I watching this, I decided Edoras is probably my favorite location.
Yeah.
Maybe apart from the Shire, but that hall on top of the hill in like the hills of the mountain, I'm like, this looks so good. It looks amazing.
That behind the scenes documentary, when I saw that when I was a kid and they were like, this is just a real place where we built a lot of stuff and then added a little bit of CG, it was like, are you kidding me? That's a real place on Earth? That's blew my mind.
That was my exact reaction. I'm like, and that's why everyone like, I guess we should go to New Zealand, Lord of the Rings tour.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, because this place is real. They're like, yeah, we got permission to shoot there. We just had to promise to like put all the land back after we built Edoras on top of it. You're like, wait, you actually did that?
Yeah.
And it looks like, as a practical set, is one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
I feel like one of the many triumphs of this is how perfectly they nailed the Rohirrim. It's like, it feels exactly like the real life manifestation of what is written in the book.
Yeah.
As far as their culture and what everything looks like. I will say Éomer, who I think the actor does a fine job playing Éomer. Éomer in the books is really cool. He's like very, very cool. Yeah. He's not quite as cool in the movie, which is partially because they're cutting around everything, right? But
yeah,
he is much more noble,
truncated role
and kingly.
Yeah,
in the book. Yeah, what a cool.
Speaking
place.
of kingly, we've got beautiful Theoden King. Bernard, I believe, is the actor.
Great casting.
He rips.
Yeah, very good.
So good.
Feels incredibly true to the book as well. Yeah. Like maybe the most true.
his performance, like, because I watched Return of the King too. His performance in Return of the King, I'm like, he's up there with Sir Ian, just in terms of like total commitment and believability to what this is. And he like, just I gained a whole new respect for Theoden watching it this year. Whereas like he's not a huge character, but I mean he's a big character. He's not one of like the main characters of the series, but as that like secondary status character, nailed this.
He has a little more nuance
to a T.
Just a little bit of like uncertainty that he is able to play
conflict
correctly.
That exists within him, which is like interesting for a viewer, where you're like, oh, he's playing conflict as opposed to just like 100% confidence all the time.
Oh man, another complaint I have is the scene where they're introduced to the horsemen, when they turn the horses around and there's
Yeah.
the man, the elf, and the dwarf. In the book, that's where Aragorn like pulls out his sword and he's like, "I'm the king of men." And it's like, and everyone's just like, "Whoa, he's so noble and kingly." And like, maybe that's not the point to have that reveal in the film trilogy, but it is a very cool,
Yeah.
it is a very cool sequence.
Yeah. I don't know, it is. I do like watching it because you do see how they pull the reins on laying the tracks for. Yeah, he's the king. Like he's the guy. They're like, we'll build up to it.
We need more conflict.
It is funny to see. Yeah, seeing him go through those steps. Like falling off the hill and dying in the middle of the movie, and then coming back and his way through
the
doors.
Wargs, the Warg Riders. I forgot about.
Lest we forget the journey from Edoras before we get the Rider. That CG is kind of bad.
Yeah, I think it was even at the time. I was like, these things.
It was
rough.
Yeah, that's shot in full daylight and looks a little worse for wear. But they make it. We get to Helm's Deep, another just banging practical miniature partially built set with seat. Like this is the epitome of all of those elements working really well for me. Of the we've got a miniature, we've got a huge portion of this as a practical set, and we've got CG wide shots. I love Helm's Deep.
The idea of an establishing shot and then being able to know the geography of what is happening in an action sequence, I feel like is something that's completely been lost in the CGI, the green screen era of like, hey, here's where it is. Now you can picture in your mind's eye exactly where the orcs are and where this person is fighting over here versus.
I wanted to make this exact point. At no point during this entire gigantic chaotic battle do you ever really feel lost for space. You know exactly where you are in the geography of the scene, which is monumental.
Yeah.
It as a filmmaker, a practical filmmaking thing that happens, it blows my mind how good of a job they do at here is the geography, here's the bridge, here's here's the wall, here's the keep, here's inside the caves. The way that they manage to keep you, the audience, us, the audience, oriented in the space is one of the greatest feats of filmmaking I've ever seen. Because now we just don't care about it. You just action. You'll get lost. It's fine.
It's good that everything is great because they won't know.
Yeah. They take care to go out of the this is where we are. This is what is happening. Now it's we'll green screen it in. It's Marvel. We'll put in some CGI in the background. It's not the focus point. It may not be the focal point, but it orients the audience in a reality, which is truly amazing.
And a complete triumph over the book version, where the action sequences in the book are the most boring parts because you can't really tell what's going on beside, the competition between Legolas and Gimli is basically the only thing holding what the heck is going on together in my head.
Yeah.
This was as a kid, this was my favorite scene I'd ever seen in anything ever. It's this is the coolest thing there's ever been.
Nothing compared to this experience that I had at the theater when this happened. I was like, this is the best thing of all time.
Yeah.
You do get the departure. We've got the elves coming for a stand with men. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
That just doesn't happen. It is the men on their own. I think it's fine. It's kind of cool. Yeah. Why not put some cool stuff in the movie? We also get a long drawn out elf death of Haldir, which is always fascinating to think about. Is the death of an immortal is such a greater sacrifice than the death of a man,
Shout out to Haldir for taking one right in the dome as Aragorn looks on as his best friend that we met like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, that is my dream role. Is like you're gonna walk on set, you're gonna have all this import for no reason. You're gonna get a cool sword, and then you're gonna die. Like, oh, okay, cool. That sounds perfect. But I mean, all of this is
Sounds like a good gig.
all of it's played up so well too. The I remember me being sad that my mom never wanted to watch this with me because it was too depressing. It was like, that's what's so good about it. Everything's so dreary in the lead up. There's no hope. The overwhelming odds.
Isn't that what's great?
Yeah. Does because my rental expired before I could finish the film, and I did not have the $8 to spend again, and one of my Two Towers DVD has been misplaced somewhere. Does Legolas win?
Oh no,
the Gimli count in this one?
I don't think they go into the final tally. I feel like he's ahead at the as a count that is given, but they don't go out of their way to give the tally in the theater.
They continue on into the next movie, I guess. And this Gimli wins because he defends the caves, and he comes out all bandaged, and he's beaten them by 2 or 3 or whatever. And then he and Legolas make this deal of like, Gimli's like, those caves were so beautiful in there, you don't even understand. And Legolas is like, gross, that sounds awful, caves. Blah. And he's like, well, you don't understand, dwarves would never even mine there because it's so beautiful. And he goes on, and then they strike a deal that once their journeys are over, they will take a trip together to visit Fanghorn and the caves together. So they like make a deal to continue journeying together as bros.
Plans.
Yeah. Like,
that's nice.
I'll bear the trees if you'll come down to the cave. It's very funny.
I love that. That's fantastic. If you want to do the next slide, I've got 2 more things I want to talk about. And this happened obviously prior to the release of Two Towers, which you can only imagine psyched me out of my mind even more for the experience. I was such a nerd at this time that I was checking thering.net daily for updates on anything Lord of the Rings. So I was so privy to like, there's this extended edition DVD that's coming out that's going to have more scenes and like all this stuff. And when this thing came out, I don't think I've ever been more satisfied with a purchase in my entire life than when this came out. This is still the pinnacle of physical media DVD culture for me, is these extended editions.
This is
There's nothing better.
I think I only had the Two Towers because they weren't cheap. It was a little easier for me to ask for the $20 DVD versus this, but I did get the Two Towers for Christmas. And yeah, I mean, these DVDs are responsible for like filmmakers, I would imagine. It's like the best behind the scenes anything there's ever been, I think.
It gives you a very practical look at the entire filmmaking process from like tip to tail. Like they go into adaptation and writing. Like that, there's a disc that's like, story adaptation to like the practical filming of it. It really does have almost like a masterclass effect for how the process worked.
And it's produced well too. Like the documentaries themselves are well produced. They're not like boring talking heads. It's like, someone spent forever making this documentary. And do you also want another movie's worth of content of your favorite thing? Like, I can't imagine the experience of having a Star Wars movie where it's like, would you like another hour of scenes cut into the film? Like, it's insane.
There was a period of time where like I used to, with like my laptop next to me back when there was a DVD, I would just fall asleep to the additional materials from these movies. As like, all right, time to go to sleep. I'll pop on Peter Jackson talking about adapting Fellowship, or I'll listen to Sir Ian McKellen's commentary of the entire movie.
Yeah.
Like it was my bedtime stories, even like as a adult, I'll just put this on and like this will be my comfort thing to fall asleep to. Like it is. I mean, still to this day, one of my favorite things that I've ever gotten is the set of them. Like it was hey, for Christmas, it came out in November. I could just be like, if be under the tree, I'll be good. And I was. It was like, this is a perfect gift. There's plenty of hours in it. It was just, and I'll still go back and watch those documentaries to this day. And I've seen them so many times. It's really good information about design and developing story and the actual filmmaking process. As someone who's interested in those things, this is top tier.
And the finish on that outer case was very nice too. The kind of faux leather, the understated design.
It
was all very
it
good.
Looks good on the bookshelf. You've got the green, the blue, or the green, red, and blue. I believe is the color sequence.
Yeah.
Oh, if you want to talk about another Christmas present, I got one more slide for us too.
Yes. Truly,
yeah, baby.
There's some incredible Star Wars games, but as far as a direct adaptation of a movie into a game, this might be the best there ever was. I watched some gameplay of this again, and it's like, man, I think it really was good. I haven't played it in a long time, but I think it really is as good as I remember it being.
It's a wonderful hack and slash game that is incredibly faithful to the movie.
And it's
fantastic.
It was also completely co-opable. My buddy Robert and I played this game dozens of times. Like it was the sleepover game for several years, I feel like. And the Return of the King was also really good. I remember I got a GameCube. I couldn't decide. I had saved up lawn mowing money if I was going to get a GameCube or a PlayStation 2. And in the little like news TV in the classroom where they'd play like Channel 1 news, they ran an ad for the Return of the King video game that was coming out, and it said it was coming out on GameCube as well. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna get a GameCube then. As long as I can play Return of the King on it as well, I'm sold.
We're good.
The animations were so good, and the whole cast was there. Like the
original voice cast does this movie. Yeah, does the
video game.
It's crazy. It's crazy that they like Sir Ian McKellen is a voice in the video games. it's fantastic. You mentioned sleepover game. It totally was. I remember this, and I had a buddy I had two friends that I really think about from like this time. And there's one who was also a big Lord of the Rings fan that we kind of enjoyed watching movies together. Then I had another friend who didn't like him as much, but would play this game with me because it was so fun. He's like, he really didn't care much about Lord of the Rings, but it was like, we could play this game together, and it wasn't like, yeah, I guess I'll play that Two Towers game. I was like, oh, this is sick. This game is awesome. You know what I mean? Like it transcended that line for people who weren't even like big fans of the series.
I didn't love third-person games, but this was an exception. And also, the Two Towers covered the Fellowship of the Ring as well, with seamless transitions from clips of the movies into the action of the game.
So good, so good. I remember the one that stands out is from the very beginning. I'm not sure. I think it's not the very beginning of the game, but it's Boromir's shield leaning up against the tree. So it's that shot before he like goes to Frodo to try to take the ring, or whatever, and it just cuts to the PS version of that shield. I'm like, oh, that's so good! It looks so realistic. Let's go,
just like it. The thing I always mention is Legolas has a combo move where he pulls out his twin knives and he spins them and he jams them into the neck of your enemy, and he tries to pull them back out and they get stuck, and he has to then kick the body off of the blades. And that was the coolest thing I had ever seen in my life.
He has the best animations by far, which is why he was always the most fun to play with. I remember there was it's in the Return of the King game. There's a spawn point where if you just don't cross a threshold, it just keeps spawning enemies.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember me and my buddy who wasn't a big Lord of the Rings fan. We just camped that spawn point and perfected combos for like hours. Where we're like, let's just rack up the biggest body count that you possibly can on a video game, because it's broken to a certain point where it's like you don't have to go across the threshold to advance. It's just going to keep sending wave after wave after wave of orbs at you, and if you're to just like go for some sick kill animations as a teenager, you could do that for hours, and I did.
Order a pizza and
order a pizza and kill some orcs, baby.
PS2 controller.
Done.
If I were better
Done.
at this, I would edit in the opening of the game, which is of course the battle against Sauron with the Isildur. You play as a Isildur in the opening, and the cut is when all the elves are lined up with the shield, and they do the downward sweep, and it turns PS2 graphics.
Yeah, it does. It's so good, man.
Wow.
You get to fight Sauron with a Isildur.
Man,
what a game.
What a game.
What a property. What a time to be alive.
What a cover. I feel like this cover is the poster that is The Two Towers, the movie for me. And all of its teenage glory.
Just play the game now. Like, I want to go back and play this and Return of the King at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You get to play as Gandalf in Return of the King. It's awesome.
Yeah, you do.
Staff and sword.
Yep. you get the staff and sword combo moves. It's so funny. I love it so much. I love it so much.
Oy.
Oh, what a time.
Well, anything else, BC?
Hey, just, we're just a few short months away from the premiere of the Tuttles and that Black Widow bike, so we're going to be on that soon. We'll probably talk about Star Wars trading cards in the new year at some point. Good to chat with you. Good to be back. I love our annual tradition of talking about Lord of the Rings. It gave me a chance to go back and watch the movie. Looking forward to watching Return of the King again next year.
Wow. Crazy to think about, BC. After that, guess we'll have to see where we are in our lives if we want to then try going through the Hobbit movies, which I can only imagine doing it if we're much happier people.
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, I remember seeing briefly. I remember seeing the first Hobbit movie and being like,
I've never been able to finish it.
That was basic. My reaction was just like, that doesn't feel like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit somehow. And I just had a really tough time with it.
I went into it in a rough state of mind too, because when they said they were doing The Hobbit, I was like, perfect. Do a victory lap. It is the perfect 3-hour movie. The Hobbit is just the right length for like, you can explore every alley in that book in 3 hours.
Yep. You can do it.
How about 9?
And then they said, we're going to make, and then because then they were like, we're going to do 2. And then like, no, we're going to do 3. And I was like, what are we doing? This is a perfect Peter Jackson 3-hour movie. The cash grab on this as 3 movies is the dumbest thing that's ever happened. And I'm still upset about it to this day.
Well, I know there are fan edits that are supposedly better. So we can maybe check that out.
That's good. We'll have to check and to take out some of the just absolute nonsense that exists.
Well, BC, happy belated Christmas to you and to
yes, indeed,
all the people in Cargo Bayland. Sorry we've disappeared. It's my fault and it's life's fault. We'll be back.
Whatever. We'll be back. You'll be here. We appreciate anyone who's still with us. If you are, hit that like and subscribe. We'll be back with more delicious Cargo Bay content.
Can you give us a swing, BC?
Yeah, I'm gonna get into character here too. You ready?
I'm ready.
Swing.
Perfect. I mean, the audio did cut out in the middle of it, but otherwise it was perfect.
Amazing.